Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's recorded webinar on improving your hiring success, the top 5 dilemmas in finding employees and how to solve them, brought to you by the Minnesota chapter of ASQ. I am John Mulcahy, your moderator for today, along with Greg Bogenschutz, who will help capture questions and address any technical issues you have for today's topic presented by Cindy O'Donovan and Julie Tishda. Before we begin, I quickly want to touch on a few housekeeping items. Today's webinar is worth one RU, which you can self-report. For instruction on how to do so, information is posted on the recertification page of the MNASQ website. The link has been placed within the chat box instructions. Everyone is on mute, so if you have a topic-related question, start by typing the word question in all caps in front of your question, and the presenter will address them as we go through the webinar. If you seem to have technical issues, please be sure to shut down all other applications like Outlook. For audio, after checking your volume, you may consider closing and restarting the webinar session using a different browser. If you have an issue with your browser, no worries. The session will be recorded and everyone may receive a recording. Also, the presentation will be loaded to the MNASQ website. Please allow a few days for coordination. Now, moving along to our session. Hiring the right people into organizations is a core business process. A right hire can raise the performance of an organization, and a wrong hire can cost thousands of dollars. Changes in the economy and workforce have had a significant influence on many organizations' effectiveness in attracting and retaining quality employees. In this webinar, recent employment trends, the implications of them for hiring managers, and strategies to address them will be covered. The session will describe the benefits and attributes of an effective and efficient recruiting hiring process and how to improve an existing process to gain better results. We are delighted to provide you with this always timely topic and interesting speakers. Cindy O'Donovan and Julie Tishda are business partners and owners of Right for Your Business, LLC, a consulting firm specializing in providing business and human resource solutions for a variety of organizations. With a combined total of over 50 years of experience in a variety of roles and business settings, they develop product, services, and workshops to assist their clients to hire, motivate, train, and transition their people. Cindy and Julie have developed tools and resources focused on all aspects of the hiring process, both from the employer and job seekers' perspectives. They led large talent acquisition functions, led mass hiring efforts, and trained managers and business owners in effective hiring practices. As former recruiters and experienced educators, they have received numerous invitations from employers, colleges, and employment transition agencies to facilitate workshops and develop teaching and learning materials. Cindy has a BA in Organizational Communications, an MA in Leadership and Management. Julie has a Doctorate of Management and Organizational Leadership. Cindy and Julie are certified in Myers-Briggs Type Indicator and the SHRM Senior Certified Professional through the Society of Human Resource Management. Please welcome Cindy and Julie, who will be speaking to us on improving your hiring success, the top 5 dilemmas in finding employees and how to solve them. Take it away, Cindy and Julie.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you for inviting us today. I am Julie Tishda, and I'll be presenting today's webinar. During our session, feel free to send questions through the chat feature, and my partner, Cindy O'Donovan, will be collecting those questions and responding to them on chat as appropriate, and we also address some as we go along via the audio. We'll reserve a few minutes at the end as well for Q&A. As the introduction pointed out, we have seen a lot of changes, and we've been experiencing a lot of changes in the current environment as it relates to employment. And there's a lot of implications of those changes to hiring managers, which we will discuss today. We will talk about the top 5 dilemmas that we hear most frequently related to finding and keeping employees. And we'll also discuss some of the benefits of having an effective and efficient process. In other words, we'll look at what is in it for you as someone who hires staff. We'll discuss the attributes and characteristics of a solid process and provide tips for improving your own results. Hang on with me. There we go. So this is the agenda today, and let's just dig in because we have a lot of material to cover. So let's first talk about the employment arena. It has changed dramatically in the past few years, and we went from a high of 10% in unemployment at a national level to 5% in April. that high level was in 2008. So in those 8 years since then, we've seen a dramatic increase in the jobs that have been available for people, thus a very low unemployment rate. In Minnesota, where we are based, it is currently 3.8% unemployment rate. These changes have shifted the employment landscape to one of a buyer's market. The buyer is the candidate who now has many more options in this tight labor market and can afford to be selective, and this makes it much more challenging for employers to attract and keep the needed talent. When we look at the employment challenges here today too, we need to think about the fact that the population is changing, and we have more people age 65 and over projected to be in the workforce and in the population than we will have school-age children or school-age workers by the year 2020. So in other words, that younger workforce will shrink, and the older workforce can continue to be a source. However, they're oftentimes overlooked as potential candidates for jobs. Many employers are looking more at the millennial generation, who are those coming into the workforce. We sometimes overlook that source of older workers. We'll also talk about some of the other groups that are unrepresented in the workforce that we can potentially tap into. When we think about how job seekers look for jobs, that has dramatically changed over time as well. And today, job seekers use an average of 16 different sources. They use internet searches, they use company websites, they use networking, so they have a lot of different strategies that they use. So the implications for that as an employer is that employers will benefit from using multiple sourcing options. In other words, using multiple ways to find applicants versus using those tried and true methods that used to work for them may not be working so much anymore, and having multiple sources is a better strategy. Another statistic that might surprise you is that 25% of new hires will resign in less than a year. That's 1/4 of the new hires that come into an organization could potentially resign in that year. What that means is that an orienting and onboarding program that is effective and comprehensive and has the new hire in mind, it can make or break that situation. In other words, when they come on board and they feel as though they're welcomed, they're trained, they are integrated into the culture, it can really make a difference in keeping them once you've hired them. Another statistic that might surprise you is that 77% of employees are open to or seeking new opportunities. Now, this is a statistic that is from Career Builder, a survey that they did in 2015 on candidate behavior. And 77% of those people, which was thousands that they surveyed, said they were looking for or open to new opportunities. And here's another interesting thing to think about. 44% of that 77% are looking for those opportunities at work on your dime. And so there's a lot of activity going on as people are looking for new opportunities. So without an engaging environment, you risk losing them. We're just actually putting the final touches on our new book, which is called Tune In and Tune Up, Simple and Low-Cost Ways to Improve Profitability Through People. It contains hundreds of ideas for tuning that dial up just even a little bit on workforce engagement, which can have a positive effect on retention. Finally, the cost of a bad hire is 1.5 to 2 times the annual salary. And all I really need to say about that is none of you can afford a bad hire. So let's take a look at the benefits of an existing process that's efficient and effective. And then we'll take a look at ways that we can get to that point if we're not there. So the benefit is that it reduces the time to fill. Reducing the time to fill means that there's less cost associated with it. One of the things that we all know is that time is money, right? And so when we spend a lot of time on a process that is inefficient, it costs money. So when positions are left unfilled, work is not getting done, and that can cost money as well. Customer service suffers, which can cost money, and mistakes can occur. So there's definitely benefit in reducing that time to fill. It also lowers the cost of hiring. Again, time is money, and you will likely have to replace people if you don't hire right in the first place. So that can cost additional money. Another benefit is having quality candidates. And we're talking about the right ones. And when we talk about the right ones, those are people that have the right skills for what you need, but also fit your organization. So they're a good match to your culture, to the strategic objectives that you want to accomplish. So they're right for your organization. Another benefit is an enhanced or upheld reputation. When you have an upheld reputation, obviously you want to maintain that. You want to have people talk about your organization in a positive light. If candidates have a bad experience, they will tell others. And by the way, social media can be your worst nightmare when it comes to this. On the other hand, a really good experience will be shared with others, and that can really be to your advantage by people spreading the word, and it will make your recruiting a lot more easy. The increased likelihood of receiving employee referrals is also a benefit. When people love what they're doing, they like the work, they feel like they're being treated appropriately, recognized, and rewarded, they're likely to tell other people. And therefore, your job, going out and finding people, is much easier when you have employee referrals. Not only that, but people are probably not going to refer individuals who they don't feel are good, solid candidates or good, solid employees. And that can also be very advantageous to you. There's also a reduced risk of discrimination complaints. When you have an efficient and effective process in place and you use it consistently, if you are challenged on any type of discrimination complaint, you have a good process to show in the allegations that you have followed it, that you have a good process that is not intended to discriminate, and that will really help you as well. And then finally, greater diversity in your applicant pool. When you have an efficient process and you do a solid and comprehensive task in getting all of the steps of the process done well, it can increase your diversity in your applicant pool, which can increase creativity, it can give you better consumer insights, and it can lead to a higher performing work group. So as you can see, there are a number of benefits of having an efficient and effective process. Okay, let's move on to look at these top 5 dilemmas. You've probably experienced a lot of them, and rest assured we'll tell you how to solve some of these as we go along. So first of all, what we hear over and over again is that people say, we don't know where to find candidates. We can't find any qualified applicants. So it's those sources that they are going after, they cannot find the people they're looking for. So their question is always, where do we go to find the applicants that we're looking for? We'll cover that. Second thing is attracting them. So once we find them, as I mentioned earlier, the unemployment situation is such that people have a lot of options now. So how do I attract them when they have all of these options out there? What can I do as an employer to lure them to my organization rather than let them go to the one across the street? So what are some of the things that we can do? We'll talk about that as well. The third thing that we hear is that we have a difficult time evaluating candidates' skills and abilities. And out of the chute, they don't really think there's a difficult time in evaluating it, but then when they have a wrong hire or a bad hire, and they look back and they say, what did I miss? I must have missed something because I hired these folks or this person, and it didn't work out. So something must have been missed along the way. I didn't do a good job in that. How can I get better at it? The fourth thing on here is crafting job offers that get accepted. Today's market, as I mentioned, is very competitive for employers, and that means that a lot of the workers out there, or potential workers for you, are looking at various different options. They can, demand some things that some employers are willing to provide, and it makes it much more difficult to get an offer accepted if other employers are throwing perks and money at them that you may not have considered. So how can you put together a package that would be attractive? That's another challenge. And then finally, it's retaining the right employees. So once we go through all this effort hiring them, what can we do to make sure that we retain them? Because that's a challenge for a lot of people. And if you recall the statistic I shared earlier, 25% of those new hires will leave in the first year. And by the way, once they decide that they're going to leave, they are really checked out mentally, so you don't get as much productivity from them. And they usually decide in the first 6 months whether they're going to stay or go. And that's why that orientation and onboarding that we talked about earlier is so important. And we'll chat a little bit more about that as we go on. So let's move into looking at what do we do about these dilemmas. Well, let's talk about the first one, sourcing. In other words, finding applicants. Now, here are a number of strategies. And in addition to those tried and true methods that you've used, such as posting jobs on specific websites, using employee referral programs, those invested in bringing the right people into the organization can take actions beyond that. Some managers or experts in their organization or a particular topic, they will go teach a course or be a guest speaker as a way to gain visibility and promote the organization. Others will write blogs on topics of interest to build a following. And as you build that following, the likelihood of those individuals who are following you being interested in coming to work for your organization and being part of something of interest to them is greater. Some companies will offer contests or games, and these are excellent ways to identify talent and capture the contact information of those who participate. So for example, MGM Hotel in Las Vegas. I don't know if anyone on their team is online here. Probably not. But anyway, they held a contest that's similar to the contest you may have heard about called Iron Chef. And when they held that contest and they announced a winner, that winner was actually hired as one of their chefs. So it brought all of these people together who had that interest, and it gave them access to individuals with that interest and that skill set. And from there, they were able to select a person to be their chef, and then they had contacts for future hires. Sponsorship is another excellent way to gain exposure. And this could be sponsoring a community event, a walk-a-thon, or a sporting event, or a conference. And all of those will get you visibility and connections with people who are there because they have a common interest. Join and attend user groups or associations. By doing that, you can connect with other people who are in your industry or your profession. And by becoming a member, it usually gets you access to a membership directory, which contains contact information for all of the members. A bonus is by attending those events, it's an excellent way to network. So you get to know people personally and in their profession, and you get to talk with them about their goals and what they're looking for, and it's an excellent way to network and connect with people in the likelihood of them gaining interest in your organization and moving over to it. Go to places where they go. For example, if you were looking for a recreational vehicle salesperson, attend the camping show. Attend those trade shows for your profession and your industry, because people will go to those types of things who have an interest in that particular subject. So that would be an excellent way to network and connect with people as well. But when you go there, be sure that you bring cards and talk to people and let them know where you're from. Let them know that you're looking, if you ever say to them, if you ever have an interest in joining our company, feel free to call me, or call me anyway. We'll get together and talk a little bit about what you'd be looking for, what your career goals are. Start building a following with these people and have regular communications with them, and that will help bring them into the loop as well. Don't forget to go after groups of populations that are underutilized. What do I mean by that? Well, did you know that the military, actually, those coming out of the military, is one of the biggest challenges for employers, is helping those coming out of the military determine how to transfer skills from military to civilian careers. So employers that really struggle with that. So they tend to overlook that group because they can't figure out how the things that they did in the military translate into the civilian world. But that is a severely underutilized group that has a lot of potential. There's workforce centers out there and veterans groups and some schools that are really good at being able to help map over military experience to civilian experience, and they can really help. Another underutilized group is the disabled population. Often when we think about this group, we think of that the people in this group are incapable of performing in any capacity. But in reality, this is really an assumption. So for example, we may believe that hearing impaired people cannot perform certain jobs, that they need to be able to hear in order to perform the responsibilities of a job. You may be familiar with an actress by the name of Marlee Matlin, and she is the only deaf performer who won an Academy Award. So automatically, we might think that somebody who is hearing impaired, significantly hearing impaired, would not be able to perform in that profession, but she was able to win an award. So obviously, she was able to perform at an excellence level. Jim Abbott is a retired baseball player in the major leagues, and he played 10 sessions, but yet he was born without a right hand, or seasons, I'm sorry. And then the other person I wanted to tell you about, his name is Noah Galloway. Now, he was a double amputee from the Iraqi War. He was a veteran. He lost his left arm and his leg in the war when he was deployed there. And in 2015, just last year, he was on Dancing with the Stars, if any of you watched that. And he was successful for several weeks in the program, showing that he had the ability to dance in this competition despite his disability. But yet we often think that people with disabilities just cannot perform the tasks that we need done in our organizations. A lot of that is assumptions, and we need to kind of think about that. And we have this underrepresented group that we can tap into. The third underutilized group are workers over 50. Many of them have lost their jobs by no fault of their own, and this group faces the longest unemployment periods of any other group because so many organizations, as I mentioned earlier, overlook them in favor of the millennials, despite the fact that they've already developed really great skills and they have a strong work ethic. But there's a feeling and a belief out there oftentimes that, well, they're not going to give us too many years left in their career. In reality, a younger worker may not give you many years either. So all I'm asking for you to do is to consider some of these underutilized groups, because there could be a really good source of applicants for you. Pardon me, I had to take a drink of water there. I'm doing a lot of talking. Okay, second to the last here, don't dismiss print advertisements. You know, some people will tell you that newspapers, as an example, are just a thing in the past. You know, don't waste your money. Nobody reads the newspaper anymore. Well, I'm here to tell you not to dismiss that as a strategy, because they still are effective. But you want to be judicious about where you place ads. They're very effective in community papers and in smaller locations, but maybe not so much in the larger metropolitan areas. But don't overlook it. Consider what you're trying to hire and where you're trying to hire, and then consider that as a source. Finally, don't overly rely on technology. You know, as HR groups downsized years ago, and at the same time talent management technologies evolved, the pendulum really swung from a high touch to a low or no touch approach, working with potential applicants. And it took the human interaction almost out of the process. And by becoming a new employee, it involves really establishing relationships. And it starts as early on as applying for a job. So don't overly rely on technology and incorporate that human touch, and it will really make a difference for you. There's a lot of other ideas that can be generated by getting creative, and I'm sure that you have a lot of creativity in your organizations that you can put your heads together and come up with some new things as well. Let's move to the next challenge, which is attracting those employees out there. So as I mentioned, they have a lot of options. So how can I get them to come to my organization rather than go to another one? Ask yourself the question, why would a highly talented person want to work here at my company? Well, here's the things that attract people to organizations. First of all, a good reputation. If you have a reputation of treating people well and recognizing their contributions, this will draw applicants in. On the other hand, a bad reputation will discourage them from seeking you out as a potential employer. Secondly, flexibility. And what I mean by that is flexibility in terms of working styles, hours, locations, maybe working from home as an example or an option for them and can be an example of flexibility. And then the ability to balance work and personal life. Those are things that are desired by today's workers. So any of that flexibility that you can build into a job offer or a job profile and for your organization, an attribute of your organization, will be more desired by some of these potential employees. Promote opportunities for growth in your organization, and also an environment that encourages employees to do their best every day. These kind of go hand in hand, but you want to be able to say, you know what, we can come into your organization and you can grow your career. You can learn new skills. You can always be employable because we'll keep you skilled and well-versed in the current growth in the organization, the growth channels, and where the organization is going. Give them opportunities to do what they do best by giving them tools and resources and help them succeed. Give them training and development so they can develop their skills and have new opportunities. And then a competitive compensation and benefits package really doesn't need further explanation. However, leadership probably does. So here's what I'm here to tell you as well. People don't leave jobs, they leave bosses. Just a few things a boss influences are things such as getting opportunities to grow, what the level of pay is, types of projects someone is assigned to, recognition for a job well done, being informed or not of what's going on in the company. All of these things affect an employee's engagement and level of satisfaction. And so many of these things have the leader's influence. And so build a type of leadership that energizes and engages employees, and get leaders involved in the hiring process. People really want to get to know the leaders in the organization, who they are, what they stand for, what their qualities are, what they're looking for, and they get really excited about meeting people in the organization who are in the leadership roles. So get them involved. The next challenge is evaluating candidates. Well, we believe there are 5 key areas of evaluation, and each one adds a new layer of information, all of which, when combined, presents a multifaceted view of the candidate. Now, admittedly, some companies do not include all of them when they hire people. We recommend each of them to help you find the right people. Remember, I said earlier, the right people are those who have the skills, abilities for the job, but also fit your culture. For example, we worked with an owner of a large company, and this, it was a bakery actually, and this woman that owned the bakery, she said, we have so much trouble finding applicants. Well, after listening to our presentation, she came back to us and she said, oh my gosh, I just realized that's not that we aren't finding people, that we're eliminating them at the very first step, because assumptions that we make as a result of their names or where they went to school or their previous employer. So when we think about getting the right people in, we have to have an open mind at that very beginning stage of reviewing the resume and looking at that very closely and not eliminating them from the running based on some assumptions that we have. The problem with this employer, by the way, was that they said we can't find people, but when they dismissed them too quickly and didn't consider them, it wasn't that they weren't finding candidates, they just weren't considering them. And the interesting thing is they were literally 2 blocks down from a huge high school that had lots and lots of people that could come and work at that location. And they had good hours and good pay, but they were just dismissing them too quickly. So it's important to keep an open mind and go through each one of these processes, starting with reviewing the resume or the application. The second part of it is screening, asking them questions that are relevant to help you decide whether they're a good fit. And then certainly that interview, if you bring them in for an interview, it's usually a 1 hour, at least initially, a 1 hour session where you have the opportunity to gain some information. And asking relevant questions that gives you evidence of what they are capable of doing can help you learn and understand what their competencies are. Then also we recommend performing background checks. Well, these are actually not always done by organizations, and I'd be curious to know how many of you do those. A lot of people say, well, we don't provide or we don't do background checks or, reference checks because nobody tells us anything. Well, that might be true. You can't get all the information from certain people, but we think it's a really valuable step in the process that's often missed. And then the background check also is a last step in the process we suggest that people do because that will confirm information and data. So relying on facts and evidence is a much more effective way than relying on biases and assumptions that we might have. When we think about biases and assumptions, we really want to try to eliminate them from the process as much as possible. So, for example, you might think a graduate from Harvard is a better candidate than one from Iowa State University, no disrespect to Iowa State, or vice versa. But that's not necessarily the case. We all have those biases and assumptions, and some of them we recognize, some of them we don't. But focus on the facts, and that can lessen the influence of these biases and assumptions on the selection process and give you solid information to make a decision on. The next challenge is crafting job offers that get accepted. Well, first of all, it's important to know the market. What does it pay on average? What is the current market for that position? What's the demand? What's the supply? What elements are included in a typical hiring package based on supply and demand? The compensation benefits specialist can conduct some research on these specific items and give you more information, but there are other sources of information that you can tap into as well to get a feel for what's happening in the market. Know the candidate's salary expectations early on. It really is not very productive to go through an entire process only to find out there is too great of a difference in this regard. So we suggest addressing it in the phone screen. Talk about salary expectations, and if it's very different from what you're willing to pay, you may need to move on, or you may need to rethink what your salary commitments are for those types of positions. Knowing what the market is bearing in relationship to that is a really important aspect because then it can help you understand the supply and demand and value of that. And that will help you be able to put together packages that can be attractive. Include monetary and non-monetary elements in offers. So, for example, those monetary perks could be things like tuition reimbursement, paying for professional membership fees. Non-monetary perks could include flexible work schedules, telecommuting, incentive programs that could be monetary or non-monetary. So if you can create a mix of both of those in a job offer, it's more likely to be attractive to today's worker. Another point is reconsider the practice of making lowball offers. What I mean by that is coming out of the chute with an offer that's about as low as you want to go with the thought that you can continue to negotiate upwards. And, that's still an option to be able to negotiate upwards, but if you come out with a really lowball offer in the current buyer's market, you'll likely lose these candidates quickly. And it's just really not a good way to start off a working relationship. And to some candidates, they will tell you that it just felt really disrespectful, and therefore your reputation may not be upheld or enhanced through that process. So if you're in the practice of doing that, I would just suggest you might want to reconsider that. Be timely with presenting an offer. Again, it's a buyer's market, and you can lose these people if you are not timely. Ultimately, offers also suggest that a company can or cannot make decisions. Cindy was telling me the other day about a person she came in contact with who said it took 6 months from the time this person had the first interview till they came back and made an offer. Well, guess what? 6 months later, this person was gone. That's a little bit extreme, 6 months, but you want to really be timely with that. Otherwise, it doesn't show well for your organization, and you'll likely lose the candidate. Finally, put all offers and conditions in writing. It's a really good way to protect the company from legal issues. It clarifies expectations, and it also shows effective communication practices from the company right out of the chute, right from the start. Now, granted, you might go through some negotiation process as you make an offer and they come back and ask for more and you come up with a different offer from the very beginning. But whatever you settle on, put it in writing. I can't tell you how many times I've heard from employers that they had an offer, they put it in writing, and then they had some discussions afterwards, and they didn't go back and change it, and it caused some problems down the road. Certainly don't want problems with that after you've gone through all this work to get the right candidate and make an offer. The last challenge is keeping them. So again, I'd ask you to ask yourself the question, why would they stay here? Why should they stay here? Well, you don't want to have a new hire come in and feel as though he or she made a wrong decision. Ways to influence them to stay are to provide a comprehensive orientation and onboarding. Well, how are they different? Well, orientation means that they are familiarized to the organization, that they understand the steps that they need to take to ensure they're paid, they receive appropriate benefits, they know the policies of the company, what to do if they're sick, who to call, what their hours are, etc. And they learn about company standards and what they need to do to uphold those. Onboarding is beyond orientation, and that relates to integrating them into the culture, taking into consideration the employee's role. So, for example, if you are bringing somebody into your organization who is working in the mail room, for example, they would take that person's role into consideration and show them around the building where they'd have to collect and drop off mail. On the other hand, if you were hiring somebody in the organization who was a supply chain manager, you probably wouldn't show them all around the building at all the mail drops. So this is the difference between orientation and onboarding. And onboarding is usually a longer process that can take months depending upon the role, whereas orientation usually takes days or weeks, but a much shorter period of time. So socialization is another important factor, and that involves connecting the new hire to others in the organization and helping them establish relationships. A good way to do this is to assign them a, quote, a buddy, or somebody who can be kind of a mentor to them as they go through the process of learning their new job. Arrange lunch partners for them for the first few days or weeks of employment. And then invite the new hire to attend meetings and events, and make sure that during that process they are introduced so that they become familiar with the people in the organization and make sure that they are feeling welcomed into the organization. Well, how do you know that they're welcome in the organization? Goes to my next point. Check in frequently with them. I used to walk down the hall every time I'd see a new employee and stop and say, how's it going? And they'd tell me a little bit about things. But I also ask them questions. How are you doing? And what questions do you have? Are you getting your questions answered? Don't just throw them out there and let them fend for themselves. Ensure that they have a place to go to get their questions answered, that they feel comfortable with that. Ensure that they have the tools and the resources they need to be successful. They might need some training on a particular process or a piece of equipment. They might need to be involved in a particular team in order to learn about all the aspects of that product or problem that the team is working on. So make sure that you get them involved as quickly as possible by connecting them to people. Create an engaging environment by showing them that you're happy to be there and that you value their contributions and opinions. Ask them what they think about a particular subject or a particular process. After all, didn't you hire them so that you can get their ideas and get some new perspectives on things? So ask them. We included a lot more ways to positively affect engagement in our book that I talked about earlier, so feel free to contact us about that at a later date. Okay, finally, how do we do all these things? I've thrown a lot of things at you in a short period of time, a lot of challenges and problems, but also a lot of ideas that I hope that you can take away. But now that you've heard these, where do you start? Well, how to improve your results are, first of all, add sourcing strategies that target desired workers and skill sets. So, for example, go where they go. Know who you're going after. Think about where they might be. What user groups would they be involved in? What trade shows might they be in, etc. And use those strategies to get at those people. You don't necessarily want a huge quantity of people, but you want quality people, right? So use a number of strategies. Again, remember, they use a number of strategies to go find a job, so you'll likely need to use a number of strategies in order to find them. Use quality tools. You all have a lot of quality tools, I'm sure. A couple of them that you can use in this process is the PDCA, plan, do, check, act. Let's plan out how we're going to go about this, check on how we're doing, actually go and do that, and then act on some of the things that we found that weren't effective. Use a balanced scorecard, etc. Other top quality tools to continually improve the process. Consistently use a legally defensible and documented process that's understood by all involved. Well, that's kind of a loaded bullet, isn't it? But really, consistency in your process is really important, just like when you're producing a really good product without just defects. You want to use a consistent process that they know works for you. And that's the same holds true with hiring. You want to consistently use a legally defensible process. What do we mean by that? Well, it's one that doesn't discriminate against people based on various factors. And then you also want to ensure that everyone who's involved in the process understands what it is, and they're trained in that, just like you would with any other process that you use in your organization. And then finally, don't let biases and assumptions influence your decisions, because we have seen so many people pass on excellent candidates because of some biases or assumptions that they had that they didn't check out. So my advice to you is to really check those out. When we talk about using all of these tools and strategies, the other thing that you want to think about is how can you use current data that you have available to you to improve this. Well, look at your turnover. How many people are you losing, especially in the new hire category? How long are they staying? What are their performance levels? Are you getting the quality and the quantity of candidates that you expect in your process? So look at all of the data that you have available inside your organization, analyze it, and then use it to make improvements. Being a quality group, I'm sure that you all have a lot of experience in that, and you can use that in the hiring process as well. So in conclusion, there are a number of must-haves for you if you want to have an effective and efficient process. You must have skilled recruiters and hiring managers. Those who are involved in the process need to understand it, but they also need to be skilled, especially in that evaluation piece. That's probably the toughest one that I hear from hiring managers, that they think they're really good at it, but then they miss too many things along the way. And it really is a balance between art and science. I didn't really specifically talk about assessment methods, but there are a number of different assessment methods that could be used. So other than just an interview, you can add in different types of, some people call them tests. We don't really like to use that word, but more assessments that you can add into the process. But it takes skilled recruiters and hiring managers to be able to use those. You also want to have an effective process. I mentioned earlier, time is money. And people have a lot of options out there. If you have a process that takes a very long period of time, people are not getting communication back, they have other options. They can go elsewhere. So you want to make sure that you have good follow-up and the process keeps moving forward as you go through it. You must have multiple sources and strategies. Back in the day, it used to be a cup of coffee at a truck stop and a handshake for some types of positions that could be filled, and it worked for a while. I worked in a large corporation for 20 years, being their top recruiting, ran recruiting, and I would tell the managers, you always get what you always got until it dries up. So if you always do what you always did, that will happen, but eventually it will dry up. And so some of those strategies that may have been used in the past are no longer effective. So go and find multiple ones to use. I did mention assessment methods again. It's that interview piece, but also some of the other strategies that are out there. We've used a lot of them in our experience, and so if you are looking for help in that area, we can definitely point you in the right direction or get you lined up with good tools that will help the process. And then also, and lastly, you need to have an engaging environment, because A, that affects your ability to attract people, and B, it affects your ability to retain people. And so an engaging environment means where people can come in, they can do their best, they feel good about coming in there, they have good communication. They have a boss who cares about them, and they feel they can grow and learn more and continue on their career there. And when you do all of these things, and all these must-haves are in place, you can expect a return on your investment. I wanted to share with you, we have developed a process to help our clients learn effective hiring techniques. And the product that we developed is called Playing the Hiring Game. And you're seeing a photo of the box that it comes in. And what this game does is it involves a simulated hiring scenario that uses a set of applicant cards with an emphasis on gathering evidence and evaluating candidates. When learners go through this process, their eyes are really open to their own biases and assumptions, and they learn about the best practices and all the steps that are involved. So it's a really fun and interactive way to learn about the process and also to really discover what are one's own biases and assumptions. So it's a lot of fun, and if you're interested in learning more about that, we're happy to visit with you at some point in time. I also want to thank you today and want you to encourage you to visit our website at www.writeforyourbusiness.com to learn more about our products and services. Look for our new book, which should be out yet this month. We're just putting the final agreements together on getting it published. We have a hiring toolkit as well that has all of the templates and form letters and information that you could use for any part of the hiring process that's available. And then finally the card sort game, which I really just mentioned to you. By using all of these resources that are available to you, you can also hire right, and you can retain those right people. So thank you for your time today, and we are happy to respond to any questions you may have. So Cindy is sitting next to me, and she's been jotting down some questions that we can respond to now. So let me just check in with her for a moment and see what questions we have that we can answer. Any questions, Cindy, that we want to answer here today? Or does anyone want to ask any questions online? Once again, the name of our book that's coming out is Tune In and Tune Up, and the tagline is Simple and Low-Cost Ways to Increase Profitability Through People. And it will be available on Amazon, and you can also contact us. Another question that we have coming in right now is how do I find different job boards, and which ones do you recommend? How much do they cost, and how do I keep track of them all? Well, that's an excellent question. So how do you find different job boards? There are a number of niche job boards, and what I mean by that is they're specific to careers or industries. So, for example, if you're looking for a manufacturing job, there's a number of websites, job boards out there that relate to manufacturing jobs. So what you want to do is Google those. So what we would recommend is also using Indeed, Indeed.com. Is a excellent source as well. I have got a tickle in my throat, so I'm going to turn it over to Cindy to finish answering this question.
Another source that you can use is to Google top 10 job sites or job boards. Every year there are a number of services that come out that identify the top 10. So that's a list worth checking out. Other ones, let's see, another part of the question, how much do they cost? Some of them are actually free, and in the state of Minnesota, a recommended one is minnesotaworks.net. The counselors there advise all businesses to sign up with them, and that is a free service. There are some that do groupings. You may hear of things like ZipRecruiter, HireMojo, there's a couple others, and they will do a group of postings for you, and there is some cost associated with those. And then last, how do you track them all? If you have a system, an automated tracking system, that's one way to do it. in our toolkit, we have a form that we have used successfully with many organizations, and it's just a way to track your sources for applicants and what the outcomes are. And sometimes people do this just through a simple Excel spreadsheet. So lots of different methods, and we'd be happy to help with any of those. Any other questions?
Hi, this is John Mulcahy speaking. So I have a couple more questions here. I'll just go ahead and keep asking, if you don't mind.
Okay.
So where can I find competitive compensation and benefits information?
Great question. Competitive comp and benefits information can be found in a number of sources. Again, you can start with your professional associations. Sometimes it's actually going directly to your competitors and asking them, what are you doing right now with your comp packages? Any specific incentives you're utilizing? But if you really want to get a good start on finding out what's in the market, there's a resource called onetonline.org. And again, that is a free service. You can look up by job category, by job title, and get all kinds of information about what's involved with the job, what the standard compensation levels are, what the market levels are for supply and demand. It doesn't provide a whole lot of benefit information, but it does include a number of those other items.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions from the audience? Otherwise, I've got one more, and this kind of deals with my assessment background.
Okay.
So what are some of the best assessment methods that you have to suggest?
Well, there's a number of those as well, and depending upon the position and the skill levels that you're trying to assess, there's a multitude available. There are companies that offer different kinds of assessment tools specific to industries and positions, but general overall assessments, the first one is just that relationship building, having a skilled recruiter who knows how to ask the right questions to assess behaviors, skills, and attributes. So that requires some knowledge, of course, of what those skills and attributes are that you're looking for. Unfortunately, we've seen some recruiters that know the questions to ask, but they're not really sure what to do with the responses they get. So it does require a little bit more learning and involvement and practice with that. We have had organizations that have asked us about personality assessment tests, psychological assessments, and there is a place for those in certain positions, but typically that is best handled by someone who is familiar with those practices and processes and using them correctly to help develop skills rather than screen in or screen out. Does that answer your question, John?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Again, any questions from other folks? If not,
all right. Well, if there are no other questions, I also just want to once again thank you for your time today. And hiring the right people is not an easy task by any means. And as you can see, there are a lot of challenges involved in it, but there's also a lot of really effective strategies that can be used. And as John mentioned earlier, we have been in the business of hiring the right people for many, many years. And if we can be of any assistance to you, please reach out. And one of the things that we do is really sit down with organizations and look at what they've been doing, what has worked for them, what challenges they have, and we strategize with them on some of the different actions they can take to get to overcome the problems they have and get to an effective and efficient process so they get the types of people that they want. So thank you once again for your time. It's been a pleasure being with you. And we'll send out more information to you about our organization and our upcoming book, and we look forward to hearing from you into the future. And best of luck on all of your challenges in finding the right people.
Thank you very much, Cindy and Julie, for addressing this information. As a reminder, this webinar has been recorded and may be available within a few days. On behalf of the Minnesota chapter of ASQ, we would like to thank you all for your responses and for attending this webinar today. Goodbye, everyone.